Namaskar and welcome to everybody for rejoining our ongoing discussion on the topic of magnetism and how to face adversity, being magnetic, that we might be able to successfully face adversity. And tonight our topic is, if you've read the agenda, it's no complaints. And you might say what we're addressing in this one, not only how to increase our magnetism, but how to plug the holes in our magnetic core so our magnetism doesn't dissipate. But before we do that, before I start on our topic this evening, I wanted to answer a question that a few people have posed to me, to some of us. People have asked us. We've been doing these webinars since the outbreak of the virus, and particularly since the lockdown began. And people have asked us, how are things going for Ananda Sangha? I mean, from us. And I appreciate that thought and those questions, because it's very kind of you to ask that question. And briefly, generally, we're keeping our morale up and we're doing well. Our individual centers that are in the major metros, we're keeping our morale up and we're continuing to serve. We're doing webinars, and we've successfully gone online, particularly through all the various centers. Now, some centers are doing better than others, and usually there's a correlation between how successfully they've been able to migrate their activity onto the web. And naturally, some people are better at that, and so it is. Some people are better at that, and so those that have done well with that are doing better than those that have not so well. They've been struggling a little bit. Now, the other part of our work, of course, is the Central Sangha, which is where I serve and many others serve. And those of us who are bringing these programs to you are serving from the Central Sangha office. And we have probably a staff of maybe about 20 people dispersed in between the NCR and between Pune. And in the face of the adversity of this virus and the economic stress that it's putting, all of us across the board have taken a cut in salary. And in addition to that, we've had to cut back on certain initiatives that we've just said, well, not now, we'll have to do later. And other ones, we've had to just completely eliminate them. And in others, we've had to downgrade them to some degree and transfer staff to other areas of our work. But we haven't had to lay anybody off, and but we have had to cut back significantly. And I'm going to segue from this into our topic tonight, because one of the beautiful things that I've seen in the face of this situation that all of us are facing this, is the wonderful spirit that is there. And although we perhaps have had to cut back, there's been no complaints. In fact, I'd like to say that people have come forward, and many people have said, no, I don't even need a salary now until things get back to, I'll just forgo it. And it's been such an inspiration to see such cooperation in our larger Sangha that is being very, very supportive to us. But I would like to say, if you have enjoyed these webinars, the ones that I conduct, Dr. Ditya conducts, many of the other acharyas have been conducting, and we've been trying to present most of them free during this difficult time. But if you'd like to make a donation, it would be very, very grateful and appreciated at this time. And you can do that by going to www.anandaindia.org/donate. And you'll find there are ways that you can donate online. So I'm going to leave it at that. I won't come back to that topic. I'm going to segue with that into our topic tonight, which is no complaints. And you might say, inspired by some of these events that have been taking place around me lately. And I want to start with a story. And this was told by Swami Kriyananda about his own life and experience. And when he, at a time many years ago, he would make trips to Australia to be able to share Yogananda's teachings there in Australia. And he was scheduled to do a class on a small island, or maybe it was a large island. They were on an island from the shore. And in order to get there, he had to take a boat across the choppy waters to get there. It was a boat journey. Now, Swamiji looked at that with a bit of dread because he unfortunately suffered from seasickness. And he thought, oh my God, how am I going to go over there? He would get seasick just looking at the water. And he would just thinking about it. And he was, how am I going to go over there and have to give this discourse and I'll just be sick? And he thought about it and he thought about it and he devised a strategy. And he said he went on that boat and instead of resisting the rocking of the boat, which is natural because the boat, when you're on the water and the waves are heavy, this boat starts to go this way and you go, oh, and you try to push it to the other way and it goes the other way. Oh, you try to resist that movement. And what Swami did is he said he went out to the front of the boat and the boat was going up and down like this. And he said, yes. And he went with it. And then he would go up, yes. And he put his whole consciousness in going with the direction of the boat. And he said he didn't get seasick. and he said he wouldn't guarantee that would not happen again. But in that acceptance of the inevitable, instead of resisting, he went with it. And he was able to overcome that. And I think this is a situation you can obviously see the parallels where I'm going with that. And a little story from my own life is in the year 2002, Sadhana Devi, my wife, and I were asked to go by Swamiji to the east coast of New England, up in the northeast of America. And we were to help start a work there. And we were there for 4 winters. And I was a California boy, and I grew up in California, particularly Southern California, beaches, nice weather, and even in Nanda Village, it's usually very mild and very pleasant. So I was not used to cold weather at all. And so we posted there, and the first winter came, and I said, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I was freezing, and imagine, I'm a person, Indian, if you're from India, you're going to there, you find the same thing. And I was freezing. And I says, no. And I was just resisting it. And so some months went by because winters there were long. And they went by and I just was resisting it until finally it dawned on me. I got it. I can't keep resisting because I was complaining. Every day I'd get up and I go, Jesus, it's cold again. And I'd let my feelings be known to other people. And finally it occurred to me that, well, I got to do something about this. And so the obvious solution was to buy the right clothing and to buy the right boots and to dress appropriately for that. And as the winter went by, slowly, I'd get up, and by the end of the winter, I'd get up in the morning and I'd say, well, it's freezing, but at least it's not 10 degrees below freezing. So it's a plus. The temperature is going up. And I began to accept it. And by the second winter, it was no problem at all. It was just natural. Of course, it's cold out. It was just an observation that the temperature happened to be freezing. I didn't resist and say, oh, that's bad. And when the temperature went up, I guess I did say it was good a little bit, but I didn't resist with my likes and dislikes. And here we find ourselves, obviously, we're in a situation where something has landed on us. And I'm not asking you to like it. I didn't like it. This is what is. And the tendency is to wish circumstances would be other than they are, is what causes that resistance. I just wish it wasn't this way. I wasn't so cold. And as long as there's that resistance in there, we're finding that friction causes us to be unhappy, really. And we look at the circumstances and we succumb to the circumstances and we react, of course, negatively in this case. And isn't, in a sense, what we all find ourselves right now, we're all of us cooped up in our flats, cooped up in our bungalows or whatever it is we're living in. And at first, we'll say, well, we're with the family, that's great. I'll have an opportunity to connect with the family and, and to change, if we stay home. Now that's pretty good for the first week or two, but you know, being with your family and week after week after week, have you noticed it can sometimes be a little bit, I love you, but I wish your wife might say to you, or you say to your wife, I just love you, dear, but God, I wish I could get out of here and go to work, or the wife wants the husband to go to work to get out of the house and out of her hair. Well, unfortunately, that's not what reality is giving us right now, is it? And so, to the degree that we resist that, that temptation comes in to start grousing about it, to start complaining about it. And I'm sure all of you have been around people in your office or wherever you work or growing up where there's a habitual complainer. You know, you think of somebody like that. You know, oh, it's too hot. It's too cold. Why does it have to be this way? Why am I always the unlucky one getting the lousy job assigned to me? Why can't, you know, are all of these assignments coming due this week rather than next week? And on and on and on. If something comes up and they complain. You know how it is. You have a person like that around you all the time. It just pretty soon you want to kind of get in there and toss them off the balcony. And it just is irritating. And we don't want to be like that. And you could say, I often think of this image when things are rough, when things are tough. When the coal mines, at least this is in America, used to be in the old days, you know, the century past, when they'd go underground with the coal mines, the miners would bring with them a canary in a cage. And there's a saying in America that don't be a canary in the cage. And because why did they do that? They'd go down to the coal mine and they'd hang the canary there in the cage in some common spot. And the canary is very sensitive because the coal mines would release gas sometimes and people wouldn't notice. But if they passed the canary's cage and the canary was flat on the bottom and had died, they immediately noticed and they got out of there. They evacuated because the canary would be the first thing to notice and would die because of the gas buildup. And the idea or the saying is, don't be a canary in the cage, meaning don't be the most sensitive one in every situation. Years ago, when I was a young man, we would just thinking just in this vein, I worked with a crew of other young men, all devotees, disciple young men, and we would go out in the wintertime and we would do various jobs in the forest. This was when I was in my 20s. And we would make some extra money that way. And we do these forestry jobs. And so it was in the winter, and six of us or so would pile into the car, and we would go, and somebody would open up the window maybe, and it would start getting cold in there. But we were all kind of, you might say, monk types at that time. And it was a point of honor not to say anything. So the question was going to be, who's going to be the first one to say, it's cold in here? And pretty soon, you know, the person may have rolled the window down inadvertently, but then it started to get cold and nobody would say anything. And we would go and we'd all be just, shivering there because nobody wanted to be the first one to complain. And it was just a bit of a tapasya, you might say, that we did that way until finally, usually somebody finally break down and say, gosh, darn it, close that window. And of course, everybody'd be happy. But it's good to train ourselves to endure a little bit of discomfort. Don't be the first one to, the wimpy one to just complain about something. Suck it up, as we say, and put a little toughness in yourself to be able to endure and not complain, because complaining doesn't help anybody. Now, to observe something, I see something wrong and I observe it. Well, that's okay. You observe it and you then have a solution. Well, let's fix that. Now, of course, I could have observed the roll down window and just observed, by the way, why don't we roll that window up? But that was a game we were playing. So there's a difference to observe and to fix the problem, or to complain about it. And usually complainers don't have a solution to something. So what do we do when we start to feel that impulse to complain? A friend of mine who is the leader of our center in Los Angeles, he had a nice suggestion. He said, let's go on a complaint fast. In other words, no complaints. Let's just fast. It tends to rise up to the surface. And, oh, catch it. No, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to complain. And you just don't do it. And sometimes he would joke with him and his wife would do the complaint fast. And he just couldn't resist himself. He'd say, no, I'm not complaining, but I'm only observing. And they'd say, no, you can't do that. Go on a complaint fast. Catch yourself. Now, Sadhana Devi and I, my wife Sadhana Devi and I, we lived, we've been with Ananda over 50 years or so. And we've lived in many group situations. And it's natural in any group situations. And here we are as families cooped up together. We're in group situations. When you're in a group situation, little things sometimes start to bug you. There's somebody's got some habits and the impulse is to complain. Now, Sadhana Devi and I, we came up with a little remedy. What we would do is if we found one another complaining a little bit, we'd say, no, we're not going to complain. And we would go for a week, no complaints for a week. And then on one day of the week, I would give Sadhana Devi, okay, you've got 10 minutes. And she would say, okay, and she would let out all her complaints for 10 minutes and I'd have to be looking at the watch. Okay. And then she'd give me 10 minutes. And then 10 minutes would be just, okay, that's it, we're done. And then we'd go the next week. And, and away it went. Now, it made something of a game of that. But you need strategies to be able to face the challenges that are going to be facing us. And this is something that is one. Now, remember, let me come back to what I said. What is the root cause of complaining? It's wishing that circumstances would be other than they are. Now, when you're wishing for circumstances to be other than they are, you're not observing and particularly being observant to what those circumstances really are, and you tend to be in a problem consciousness state of mind. But when you step back, you're not resisting it. This is just what is. Circumstances, as Yogananda said, are always neutral. And then you're looking at them, and maybe you can fix some of those things. And if you don't react, and it's the essence of not taking on a reactive spirit, but being just observant. And you just, that you can, the mind, the intellect, ego, and that likes and dislikes, chitta, you basically stop it there and you don't indulge yourself in that. Now, I have a quote here that this is one of my favorite quotes of Master. And I can remember the first part, the quote itself, but I want to read the whole context of it. And it's tears and sighs on the battlefield of life are but the liquid cowardness of a weak mind. Now, let me read that fully now. Tears and sighs. Tears and sighs on the battlefield of life are the liquid cowardness of a weak mind. And then he goes on to say, those who give up the fight become prisoners within the walls of their own ignorance. Life is nothing if not a continuous overcoming of problems. So we think, problems, they don't end. It's a continuous overcoming of problems, a continuous coming up with creative solutions to whatever new and novel is going to be presented to us by life. So it's the continuous overcoming of that. Every problem that waits for a solution at your hands is the religious duty imposed upon you by life itself. There can be no life that is not full of problems. There can be no life that is not full of problems. Essentially, conditions are neither good nor bad. They're always neutral, seeming to be either depressing or encouraging because of the sad or bright attitude of the mind. But let me come back to that other quotation here. Every problem that waits for a solution at your hand is a religious duty imposed upon you by life itself. Now, we kind of think, well, why do these problems come to me? Well, there's probably the problems in your karma somewhere. In some fashion, we've invited that problem to us, or life is imposed upon it, whether we invited it or not. It's imposed upon us in some way. And to that fact, we must see that this is a religious duty. Whatever problem has come to us is not somebody else's problem. It's our dharma to fix. And so if it's come to you, then it's for you to fix and to respond to, but respond to it appropriately and in the right way. And what is the right way? Well, one is grudgingly. But if you respond to a problem grudgingly and complainingly, well, you've not really overcome it, have you? You've just pushed it aside and you buried it until it's going to come back and you learn the lesson of it. And that lesson is to be able to accept whatever comes as coming to you. It's your duty. It's your dharma. It's your challenge. And it doesn't have to be fair. There is no such thing as perfect fairness in that sense. Karma is fair. God is fair. But we don't, in a sense of our worldly sense of fairness, don't look for that. I remember Swamiji once wrote, he says, justice in this world, don't look for it. Not that justice isn't something we shouldn't look toward, in other words, try to achieve some sense of justice, but in the sense that there is justice, perfect justice, is that which comes to us is justice. So the worldly justice may not correlate with what we think is truly just. We must accept what life gives us and then deal with that. And so our challenge here, we're in this coronavirus situation together, and we have a choice of how to respond. And I think all of us as devotees, we know what the right response is to be even-minded and cheerful under all circumstances. Now, that's a hard thing to do. And I remember having a young teenage girl as my neighbor, and she was in a fit. And I says, you know what? Don't be in a fit. Be even-minded and cheerful. And she's told me just right out, she says, I don't want to be even-minded and cheerful. She wanted to be angry. Now, I had no good answer to her. I says, well, okay. I tried to cheer her up, and we tried to get her to laugh and joke. And maybe I was a little successful there, but she did not want to. So I think the first thing is I'd have to ask you, do you want to be cheerful? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to at least be even-minded so that you can absorb these, whatever comes to you? And I think that's true. We do. We want to be that way. Hold on. Somebody's on the telephone with Adityaji. Now, it's how we respond to situations that really is the true test of our spirituality. And so as we go forward in the weeks ahead, in the days ahead, let's keep that in mind. Don't complain. And again, go back to accepting the way things are. I've noticed that one of the things that happens when you're in a difficult situation, or put in this situation now with this virus, is it's important to have patience, because when it first happens, it's very different. It's very different from what we're used to. And so because it's different, we react to it. But as time goes by, it begins to seem familiar. And so it'll happen to us as well. As we are about to embark on 2 more weeks of lockdown and perhaps even more after that, slowly we develop a routine. Have a positive routine. Now, the other thing I would advise you is some people are going to respond to this situation better than others. It's not usual situation. And we have to be patient with ourselves of getting to the point of being able to respond correctly. And we especially have to be patient with other people as well. Not everybody is going to be able to respond positively all the time. And just like that teenage girl I just mentioned, we need to be understanding of what their reality is and just be forgiving to that. And especially at this time, be kind to one another and accept people are under stress. And when they're under stress, they don't always act in the highest way. And they look back on it, and they probably feel bad themselves if they didn't respond in that way. So I ask that of us. Be kind to one another, be patient with one another, be kind to ourselves, and be patient with ourselves also, because sometimes we don't always act in the highest way either. But this will pass, and we'll find ourselves in coming back to that central point of rest. What helps us be able to have that attitude? Well, obviously, meditation, contact with God, being centered within, and making that daily appointment with the divine. Even people have asked me, says, well, I just can't, there's so much running through my mind, I can't meditate. If you can't meditate, you still can take time and have a conversation with God. And that's what I recommend you do. Have a conversation with Babaji. I do that every night. I say, Babaji, I don't know, you're going to have to help me. Have a conversation with Guru, all the masters. You can at least do that. And if you do that, you keep that connection alive, because sometimes in our life, the situation is so difficult for us that we can't meditate. Our mind is restless. We've lost our ability to control it. But we always have the ability to keep that conversation with the divine going. And so I recommend to you, at least do that. And you'll find time goes by, and then the waters become smooth. When that time's happened, then we raise our sail and we start sailing and making good time toward our ultimate goal. So keep these thoughts in mind. And I look forward to speaking with you again next Saturday evening. And tomorrow we do our weekly question and answer session at 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I invited Dr. Ditya to join me to help me answer some of the questions that wander off into the medical world. And so join us tomorrow if you have questions. And I advise you can send in questions on the chat line, and you can send them into online at anandaindia.org. And we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can. And we can go back and forth in that way. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again, some of you, tomorrow afternoon, and the rest of you next Saturday at 7:30. God bless all of you.